So, tell us where you were born and when and all that.
I was born at the hospital in Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio, Texas, 1930, May 4th, 1937. And
How long did you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
my father was in the Army. He was well, at that time, I don't know what rank he was, but he eventually became a master sergeant. And we lived there a number of years. And I'm not sure exactly what year it was that we moved to northern Texas for a short stint. And I don't know what base he was serving on, but he was stationed up near Amarillo for a number of years. And that's when my first memories came to me about living in Amarillo.
Oh, okay.
So do you have something you wanted to ask me?
Well, then, so you were in Amarillo for a while,
Yeah, a number of years.
and then
I have vague memories of living there in this apartment building. And I can still remember Mother used to put rags on our feet when she'd mop her floor in the kitchen. She'd put the rags on our feet and let Jackie and I skate on the soap. Have a lot of fun. And that's where I first saw snow. I always tell everybody I didn't see snow until I was 21, but that's wrong because I can remember snow being in Amarillo.
but just once, right?
Yeah, that's all I remember. But Mother this apartment building we lived in, we had upstairs, downstairs, and the kitchen happened to be upstairs. And I really don't know how many different apartments or people lived in this apartment building. It might have been a duplex house for all I know. And but Mother that snow that was on the roof, we had when we had breakfast, we had a breakfast nook. Had the backside built into the wall. And Mother would sit there and open the window. There was a window that you could see out over the yard, and part of the roof was exposed from the window. You could see, and she would open up that window and scoop fresh snow off the roof and make snow ice cream.
Oh,
I remember that.
so you must have had snow more than once then.
Yeah, evidently. But when you're like 4 or 5 years old, you don't remember that much.
So how would she make the ice cream? She'd have the snow, and then what else?
Oh, you put sugar and vanilla.
Just gonna put that on top.
Yeah, just kind of whip it up and you've got snow ice cream.
Pretty cool.
She was always so inventive. And that at that time, Mother was just a young woman. She got married when she was 16. So she might have been 20 years old for an hour, 18 or 19.
Well, she wouldn't have been 18 or 19 if you were born. Because you were born when she was 19.
Yeah.
So you were older.
Well, she had Jackie when she was 17.
Right, and then you at 19, so
Yeah.
she had to have been early 20s at the
But
earliest.
that's so young to have 2 children.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really young.
She was like one of the kids,
So after Amarillo, then where did you live?
We moved back to San Antonio.
Okay.
And we started living with, until we got housing on the base, we lived with Aunt Little May and Uncle Harley.
Oh, okay.
And they had 2 children, my cousins, Tommy and Barbara. And we had a lot of fun living together, having 4 kids running around. Although I used to cry a lot because Jackie and Barbara wouldn't play with me because I was younger. I can remember Mother yelling, "Y'all play with her now, you hear me?" I'm crying because they won't let me play.
Must have been pretty traumatic if you still remember it.
I do. I remember it. I was just crying.
So then you lived on the base.
Yeah, we finally got housing, and we lived there on Chaffee Street.
Chaffee Street.
Uh-huh.
In San Antonio.
On the base.
Oh, okay.
It was base housing.
Okay.
But actually, before that, we actually lived in that barracks I was telling you about. We got the barracks waiting for a permanent night housing.
Oh, so it was Little May's place, and then the barracks.
Barracks,
and then Chaffee Street.
Yeah.
So what was the barracks was where you tied Your mom tied branches to the pole in the middle
Yes.
to make a tree?
It was a barracks like
Yeah.
the men used to live in during the war.
Yeah.
We thought that was so cool. And she made snow.
From there too? There's snow there?
No, she made it out of soap.
Oh, not real snow. Okay.
She used, back in those days, there was a product called Ivory soap, but they also had it in flakes. And she would use that, add water to it, and use a mix master and whip it up and make foam out of it.
And then what would you do with it?
And she would take spoons and knives of it and wipe it on the tree, and it looked like the tree had snow
Your
in it.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, and the soap would dry, and we had snow in our Christmas tree.
So, was your Christmas tree real at that point, or was it just the branches tied to
No,
the
it was
pole?
the branches tied to the pole.
Now, was that your mom, or was it your dad that did that?
His mom.
Oh.
She was smart. She was so inventive. If she didn't have something that she wanted, she'd make do.
Yeah.
She was very, very smart, very intelligent woman.
Creative.
Yes, she was always doing stuff. Just nobody else would think about it except my mother.
Well, when you have to do those things. So then, after the barracks, you moved to Chaffee Street on the base.
On the base.
And what was that like?
It was really good, and then the war came along.
Yeah.
And my father was sent overseas. And mother was pregnant at the time with her.
Now, before he left, was he working in the hospital as a cook?
Now that was when I was a baby. We'd have to go back in time for that.
Oh, okay. So by this point, he was no longer the cook in the hospital. He was actually
I don't
a
know.
recruiter, or what was he?
No, the recruiting was the last thing he did when he retired.
Okay. So are you sure what he might have done before he went to the war?
He was with the MFSS, which is Medical Field Service School.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that he told stories, the only stories he told about the war that he was in, World War II, was that he would drive an ambulance and he would help set up MASH units
Oh.
in the front lines. And the only thing that the few stories that he told about his war experience was that one night he was sitting in a tent and he heard a noise, and it was a strange noise, and it was a loud noise, and he went outside. There was a 90 millimeter shell coming through this tent that he was in. It was a dud.
Wow.
So, and then another time he was going into when the war ended, he was driving this Jeep or something into a German town after they'd surrendered. And some German soldiers surrendered. They stood up and put their guns up, and Daddy marched them into town in front of the Jeep and turned them into the police.
Wow.
And we've got pictures Bruce must have those pictures of him sitting in a Fox trench, eating out of a tin can, like the canteens.
Yeah.
And you can just, and he didn't very much talk about the war.
Yeah.
So
this was during World War II,
yeah.
and you were back in San Antonio?
Well, when Daddy got sent overseas, mother was pregnant, and she had Herb while he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So Daddy didn't see Herb until he was like 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the most interesting thing about that was the fact that I can remember when the war ended, and everybody was blowing horns, and everybody was out in the yards, and we were all celebrating, and it was so exciting, because the war was over. But that's where we lived, close to the ocean in Jacksonville Beach,
And why did you move to Jacksonville?
because that mother needed somebody to fix Herb's feet. When Herb was born, he was born club-footed.
Mm-hmm.
And she found out, being military, that they had a special place near Jacksonville that would operate on his feet. Because when he was born, his toes were turned around touching his ankle. And I think he was a very big baby, and he just hadn't moved much.
Yeah.
So that's what caused that. So they operated and fixed his feet, straightened his feet out, and he had scars, still has the scars up the back of his leg, where they took the muscles and straightened them out.
And that took several surgeries, right?
Yeah, surgeries, and he had casts on his feet and on his legs.
So when you first moved back, you went to Monticello, right?
Yeah,
Well, Osceola, I guess, technically.
that's where we got off the train and we couldn't
In
find
Osceola.
Grandma. I told you about that.
Your grandma Hamilton.
Yes, and she was living in Monticello.
Okay.
We got off the train in Osceola, which is where she had lived. And she was moving into a house, but she was waiting for the house to get painted. And so she was staying with Aunt Selma. And finally, and when we got off the train in Osceola, they wouldn't go off and leave us until we had somebody to take us to Monticello. And the post office.
Who was they? Was that like the conductor or?
No, well, yeah, it was the conductor. He wouldn't leave us, just leave mother and 2 kids standing, 3 children standing in the station with nothing
Yeah.
to do, nobody to take care of them. Mother didn't know what to do. She didn't know where Grandma was. She was supposed to be in Osceola, but she had moved to Monticello with Selma. So anyway, the postman was going into Monticello, and you know it wasn't very far from Monticello, about 20 miles or something like that. So he took us
Go ahead. I'm just gonna turn this off. You just keep talking.
okay, just start turning it up. So anyway.
'Cause that's loud.
Yeah. So anyway, he took us into Monticello, and he left us at the bus station. And the bus station was a combination service station and a bus station. It wasn't fancy Monticello, a little bitty town. And the taxi cab driver came up and was talking. I don't know how that happened, but he was talking to the man that worked in the service station. And he says, "Oh, I know where Miss Hamilton lives now."
Oh,
That's how little the town was. Probably about smaller than Solon.
yeah.
And we finally got connected with my grandmother. And so they came in, we stayed with her. And at that time, Selma wasn't married, so we stayed in the apartment. I have no idea how long. Finally, we moved into Grandma's house. And we lived there, and I started first grade there in Monticello. So
All the while, your mom was taking Herb over for his treatments,
right,
surgeries.
she would leave us with Grandma until she could get settled in Jacksonville, close to the hospital where he was being operated on. So when she got that set up, she moved us into an apartment building for her operations, so she could be with him. And she breastfed him. She pumped her breast and took milk to him the whole time he was in the hospital. Can you imagine her doing that?
Well, back in that day, that might have been pretty difficult.
Well, she did it, and she would ride the bus to the hospital, wherever that was. I never got to go because I was too young.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of adventures living on the beach. I lived through a hurricane.
Yeah.
I told you about going out and the police came to evacuate us to go to the USO building that night to spend the night. And he picked me up, because I was only 6 years old, to carry me out to the police car and to go to the USO building, just to stay there until it was over with. And as we were going out, back then there was ditches on the side of the road there at the highway where we lived. And he got up there with me and he went boom, and down we all went in the water.
I didn't know that.
It's funny what you remember, but that was dramatic, being dunked in the water.
Yeah.
And I was so scared and I was crying for my mama. But we finally got to the USO building, and they had cots set up all over for people to sleep on.
Yeah.
So we got one cot for the 2 of us, three of Jackie and I and Mom. Of course, Herb was in the hospital at the time. And this man was afraid he was going to get stepped on. He asked Mom if he could sleep under our cot. So he crawled under there, and I could remember all night saying, "Mama, there's a man under our bed, there's a man under our bed." That's something else that was traumatic for me, I guess.
Just seemed weird to have somebody there.
But I have these memories. How do I remember all this? And I was but 6 years old.
Well, it was pretty traumatic, I guess.
I guess. So we went back to the apartment building. We actually lived in a duplex, but it was upstairs and downstairs. And the mayor of Jacksonville lived upstairs, he and his family. And I've got those pictures in my hula skirt.
Yeah.
That was his daughters. I don't even remember their names now. But we used to play with those girls, and Daddy brought back those hula skirts.
Yeah.
And that's when we posed pictures for the hula skirts, and even no top on. I was almost 6 years old. So then when Daddy got home, and that's where we were sitting outside, Mother was sitting on the porch of this apartment building when Daddy came back. He didn't tell her he was coming home. She knew he was coming, but she didn't know when. And she was sitting there, she had her hair all done up in curlers, just, you know, something to do. And we were all sitting on the porch just enjoying the weather because this hurricane was over with. And Daddy drove up in a cab and got out with his duffel bag. And Mother says, oh, and she jumped up and ran in the house and pulling curlers out of her hair. She didn't want him to see her with curlers in her hair.
Yeah.
And so then we went back to Grandma's in Monticello. And Herb's feet were, they had taken the last of the cast off. And one night we were, and I don't know how long we stayed with Grandma, but one night we were sitting in the living room, and Herb hadn't walked yet, and he'd had his cast off, but he would crawl around. He got up and he walked to me. And that was, everybody was just like.
For the first time.
And he was 2 years old, but he never walked.
So your dad got to see that at least.
Yes, he did.
He saw his first steps.
From her.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's where I heard my first joke from my grandmother. But, you know, I've told you the joke.
Yeah, tell it again.
Why did the farmer push the cow off the cliff? He wanted to hear the Jersey bounce.
Yeah, because of the Jersey Bounce song or whatever that was popular.
Like Tommy Dorsey or one of the big band leaders, that was the name of a song that they did.
Okay.
I remember my grandmother just laughing, and she used snuff. She was always spitting. Isn't that nasty?
Yeah, well.
And I can remember for Christmas I gave her a little container of snuff, and she thought, oh, she just made over that. It was just one of the most wonderful things she ever got for Christmas, you know, for me. I was just
Very cute.
And she made the best fried chicken. I can remember her killing her chickens when she, and that was traumatic. I guess seeing her take the chicken and go wringing it out like that, the neck.
Yeah.
But boy, it sure was good eating.
Didn't stop you from eating it.
and she had a cow named Daisy. And Jackie and I were always trying to climb on top of this cow, and she had a little cat named him Dickie. And this was out behind her house. She just, for fresh milk, she just had a cow.
Yeah.
And so she had a big enough yard that she fenced it in. She had this cow and calf.
Cool.
I don't know what happened to poor little Dickie. But that's, you know, what I remember them, her having a cow.
Yeah.
And that's where I got hurt with my arm. I've got the scar to prove it.
Yeah.
Where I was swinging on vines out in her backyard. You know, this is Florida, there's a lot of vines around. I was swinging and scratched my arm, and I kept picking the scab and got it very badly infected. And Mother was so busy at the time going back and forth to the hospital seeing her because we, you know.
This was before your dad had come back,
Yeah.
obviously.
And so she put me in the hospital there at, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the base now. It was a military base close to Monticello. We used to go over there all the time. Anyway, these pilots used to come in. I was the only child in the hospital. This hospital was for military people, nurses and, you know, flight captains and all that kind of stuff. So they heard about this poor little girl, 6 years old, in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd come over, and by the time I left the hospital, I had all kind of wings and money, and they would give me prizes.
Gave you a lot of attention.
Yeah. And they let me go with the nurses when I got to feeling better after they operated on my arm. And I finally overcame the poison in my arm. And they let me go around with the nurses and hand out orange juice to all the patients. And they made a cute little 6-year-old girl. So that was fun.
Cool.
And I remember that. That makes me mad I forgot the name of the military base close to.
Well, we could probably Google it later.
Yeah.
So how long did you live there before you went back to San Antonio?
Well, when Daddy came home, I'm sure we hung around for a while until we kind of acclimated again, and we found out that, and that's when we got on the train and went all the way back to San Antonio.
Okay.
And that's when we started living with Harley and Lily.
Oh, I thought that was earlier.
No, that was after Daddy came home. And we were living with them until we found a place to live. And that's when we lived on the barracks.
Okay, so all the stuff that you told me before really happened after the war.
Yeah,
Okay.
after Daddy came home. Lived in the barracks.
So when Grandpa went off to war and you were in San Antonio, you were living where?
Well, I'm really not sure. We must have been living in San Antonio.
Somewhere, or maybe he went to
Or
war
maybe
from
From
Amarillo.
Amarillo.
Yeah,
One
okay.
of those two places.
Okay. When you were young, it's hard to remember.
Yeah, but I still have fond memories of living in Amarillo. That's where that same house where Mother made the snow and everything off the roof. That's the roof that Jackie and I jumped off of. And there was a peach tree down below. We'd swing down, jump off, and grab that roof of the house.
You were little.
I was like a monkey. If Mother had seen us, she would have died.
Yes, she would have.
But I have memories of jumping off and grabbing that limb and woo, woo, and like, I did it. I promise you, I did it.
Oh, I believe you. So you moved back to San Antonio. You lived at the barracks. You lived at the on the base,
Yeah, on Chaffee Street.
and at that point, your dad was what was the acronym MSF?
Medical Field Service School, MFSS.
So he was doing that at that point, or is that during the war?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I think it was probably during the war, Medical Field Service School.
but then he came back, and somehow he was back on the base. He
Yeah.
was still enlisted.
Because when I was born in the hospital before that, Daddy was a cook in the hospital, and that's where he made the muffins for General Pershing.
Yeah,
That was a story that I heard.
yeah.
That's where that came from.
Okay. So when you moved back to San Antonio,
Mm-hmm.
and you lived on the barracks, at what point did you move?
Chaffee Street.
Yeah, from Chaffee Street, where did you move from there? Because at some point, I know you lived on San Francisco.
And then before that, they bought a house in South San.
South San Antonio.
South San, they call it South San. In San Antonio, it's a neighborhood.
Okay.
And that's where Mother had a kitchen, but she didn't have any, she had water, running water, but she didn't have, for some reason, they had something that caught water underneath the sink. She had to use a bucket to catch water in.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a rundown house, and Daddy was going to fix it up. And Jackie and I were sleeping on a screened-in porch. Yeah, they had windows. We used to open the windows at night and reach out. And we lived close to where there was a fig tree close to the house. And if we could reach some of the ripe figs, she and I would pick figs at night and eat figs in bed.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's what, like I said, I started school in Monticello, so I was probably in the second grade when we lived in South San. And we used to have, Mother had ice delivered. She didn't have an electric freezer or anything. She just had an ice box.
Okay.
And every couple of days, a man with a truck would come around and sell ice. And then we would run after the truck and get the splinters of ice off the truck.
Like they were treats.
Yeah. And isn't that funny what you remember eating ice, and you had to get careful not get wood splinters in your mouth from eating the ice.
Oh, yeah, I guess not.
Crazy, just crazy things that you remember.